March 18, 1925. In a matter of hours, a single storm would unleash the deadliest tornado in United States history, leaving nearly 700 people dead and thousands injured along a path more than 200 miles long. As destruction closed in, there were no warnings, no radar, and almost no chance to escape. How did an entire region come to be so unprepared? The answer begins with the atmosphere. By late morning on March 18, 1925, the lower Mississippi Valley was primed for violent weather. A deep, slow-moving, low-pressure system sat over the Central Plains, drawing warm, humid air northward from the Gulf of Mexico. Surface observations recorded temperatures climbing into the 60s degrees Fahrenheit across southern Missouri and Illinois, with dew points in the upper 50s to low 60s degrees Fahrenheit. These measurements indicated deep moisture surging into the region. Above the surface, winds shifted sharply with height. Near the ground, a strong, low-level jet carried southerly winds at 40 to 50 knots, feeding additional warmth and moisture into the developing storm system. Higher aloft, powerful westerly and southwesterly winds swept across the region, creating a pronounced change in both wind speed and direction from the surface up through several kilometers. This vertical wind shear is a key ingredient in the formation of supercell thunderstorms, the type most likely to produce long-lived, violent tornadoes. Thermodynamic instability also played a role. The combination of warm, moist air near the surface and much colder air aloft resulted in moderate but sufficient convective available potential energy, estimated from modern reanalysis to be in the range of several hundred to just over 1,000 joules per kilogram along the tornado's eventual path. While not extreme by Great Plains standards, this level of instability, paired with the exceptional wind shear, set the stage for a highly organized, rotating storm. A strong upper-level jet stream overhead provided further support for deep, sustained updrafts. The storm system's warm sector, just south of a sharp frontal boundary, became a corridor where the classic ingredients for a major tornado outbreak aligned: abundant moisture, moderate instability, and unusually strong, veering winds with height. In this environment, a single thunderstorm could persist for hours, drawing energy from every layer of the atmosphere. Together, these factors produced conditions favorable for a long-lived, rotating storm capable of producing a long-track tornado. Forecasting tools and observational networks in 1925 had important limits. Modern analysis can reconstruct many elements of the event, but it cannot replace the real-time observations and warnings that were not available at the time. In 1925, the U.S. Weather Bureau operated with significant constraints. Forecasters relied on hand-drawn surface charts and scattered station observations transmitted by telegraph from towns and cities across the region. These daily synoptic maps, published in the Monthly Weather Review, offered only a limited picture of atmospheric conditions. There was no operational weather radar, no upper air sounding network, and no numerical weather prediction. Above the surface, data were almost entirely absent. Information about wind, temperature, and moisture just a few thousand feet up, the layers where tornado fueling shear develops, remained out of reach. No radar and sparse upper air data left forecasters unable to see critical ingredients. Communication technology further limited real-time understanding. Most weather updates moved by telegraph, and delays were common, especially in rural areas. Reports from outlying stations could arrive hours after observation, if at all. The Weather Bureau's regional offices in St. Louis and Chicago could track broad patterns, such as low-pressure systems and frontal boundaries, but had little ability to monitor rapidly evolving local threats. Official policy also shaped how warnings were issued. In the 1920s, the Weather Bureau's internal memos and published guidelines explicitly forbade the use of the word tornado in public forecasts. The reasoning was twofold: fear of public panic and a lack of scientific certainty about tornado prediction. Instead, forecasts referred only to severe local storms or strong winds. Even when forecasters suspected tornadic conditions, they were required to use vague language. This prohibition meant that communities in the path of the approaching supercell received no specific alert about the risk of a tornado. With no radar, no upper air data, and a ban on explicit tornado warnings, the public faced the storm with little more than general storm advisories and their own observations of the sky. The absence of targeted warnings would have profound consequences as the day unfolded. Shortly after 1 in the afternoon on March 18, 1925, a powerful tornado touched down in the hills of southeastern Missouri. Moving rapidly, it swept northeast at an average speed of nearly 60 miles per hour, crossing rural farmland and scattering debris along its path. The tornado showed little sign of weakening as it tore through isolated homesteads and small communities. Within minutes, farmhouses were dismantled, barns collapsed, and fences vanished under a sky that darkened rapidly. The tornado's forward speed was extraordinary for such an event. In the time it would take most storms to devastate a single county, this one had already advanced across several. Local residents had only moments to react. Telegraph lines and formal warning systems were non-existent in these rural stretches, so the first sign of danger often came as a distant roar or as sudden darkness. By early afternoon, the tornado reached the Mississippi River near the small town of Gorham, Illinois. Here, the river marked both a physical and a human boundary. Rail lines traced the edge of the floodplain, connecting Gorham to the wider region. As the tornado crossed into Illinois, it struck Gorham with full force, demolishing homes, businesses, and the town's modest rail infrastructure. Contemporary newspaper accounts described a scene of near-total destruction, with almost every building in Gorham damaged or destroyed in a matter of minutes. Rail service was halted, and telegraph communication failed, isolating the community just as help would be most needed. Some later retellings mention close calls involving trains near Gorham, but surviving records do not provide a clear, verifiable account of a single dramatic railroad crew incident at the river crossing. The tornado's relentless pace and the suddenness of its arrival left little opportunity for organized response. As Gorham reeled from the impact, the storm pressed on, accelerating toward more densely populated towns deeper in southern Illinois. Murfreesboro, Illinois, became the center of the storm's devastation just after 2:30 p.m. Entire neighborhoods vanished in minutes, with homes swept from their foundations and debris carried hundreds of yards. The death toll in Murfreesboro reached approximately 234, the highest ever recorded in a single U.S. community from a tornado. Photographs from the aftermath show blocks reduced to bare earth, trees stripped of bark, and only fragments of brick chimneys left standing. Damage in Murfreesboro and neighboring towns, such as DeSoto and West Frankfort, displayed the kind of destruction associated today with the highest intensity rating on the Fujita scale, a retrospective F5, assigned decades later by tornado historian Thomas P. Grazoulis after reviewing survivor accounts and archival images. The tornado's path continued across southern Illinois at remarkable speed, sometimes exceeding 60 miles per hour. Communities, in its way, had little time to react. In DeSoto, a school collapsed with students and teachers inside. West Frankfort's mining neighborhoods were leveled, and the destruction extended into rural areas where entire farmsteads disappeared. The storm pressed northeast, crossing into Indiana by late afternoon, still producing severe damage. The sheer length and continuity of the tornado's track have been the subject of ongoing debate among researchers. While early accounts described an unbroken path stretching roughly 219 miles, more recent studies, including a detailed analysis by Johns and colleagues, point to possible gaps in the damage record, especially in sparsely populated sections of Missouri and Indiana. Grzoulis's own research supports a continuous tornado over at least 151 miles, with high confidence in the Illinois segment's unbroken devastation. The distinction between a single tornado and a family of closely spaced tornadoes remains unresolved, and the evidence has limits in places where records are sparse. The event's core remains the longest and most destructive stretch of tornado damage reliably documented in United States history. Researchers continue to examine the record, and where data are limited, the degree of continuity is described with appropriate caution. In the hours after the tornado passed, the scale of destruction became clear. More than 2,000 people suffered injuries along the tornado path, many trapped beneath collapsed homes, schools, and businesses. Wooden balloon frame houses, common in these towns, failed at their weakest points. Roofs torn away, walls splintered, entire structures lifted from foundations. In Murfreesboro and neighboring communities, neighbors and passers-by began the first rescue efforts, pulling survivors from debris and carrying the wounded to makeshift aid stations. Telegraph and telephone lines were down across much of southern Illinois, so word of the disaster reached outside towns only in fragments. The American Red Cross began mobilizing as soon as news arrived, but damaged roads and blocked rail lines delayed organized relief. With immediate outside help limited, local residents worked through the night, improvising medical care and shelter for the injured and homeless. The urgent need for coordinated rescue and relief exposed the limits of both construction and emergency response in 1925. After 1925, tornado policy shifted slowly. The Weather Bureau avoided direct warnings, using vague phrases such as severe local storms, until the early 1950s, when military meteorologists and a series of deadly tornadoes created pressure for change. Official tornado forecasts and warnings began, and the first severe storm forecast centers, precursors to today's Storm Prediction Center, emerged. Weather radar, introduced in the 1950s, made real-time storm tracking possible. Engineering lagged behind. Building codes rarely addressed tornado winds. Only in the late 20th and early 21st centuries did FEMA and ICC set standards for safe rooms and wind-resistant construction. Today, radar, spotter networks, and reinforced shelters define preparedness in tornado-prone regions. Today, advanced radar and warning systems save countless lives. Yet the United States still records more deadly tornadoes than any other nation. The scale of vulnerability remains. Each new storm tests how much we have truly learned and how much we are still willing to risk. Thank you for watching.